Well, it's the stuff of legend. Panthers are roaming around in the bush. Making noises like that. There are reports going back decades of big cats on the prowl in Victoria, from the high country right down to the sea. Well, now the Victorian government says it's going to find out once and for all. It's actually going to put money into this to work out whether these feral felines actually exist. Simon Townsend runs a website. It's called Big Cats Victoria. Hi, Simon.
Hi, Michael.
Now, you've been on the trail of these big cats since you were a kiddie.
No, well, not quite a kiddie. Let's say a spotty-faced adolescent.
Okay.
I was I've been collecting information of reports of these things for some time, simply because I had an experience myself when I was in my teens.
What did you see?
I saw what I could only describe as a black panther at close range. This was behind Warburton, about 1973. So it's a fair while to go.
And that quest, or that sighting when you were a spotty teenager, has really, as I read it, determined the course of your life.
No, not quite. It's just one of many things I do. But it's become a serious a thing of import, simply because I've interviewed a great number of very serious, good observers who've seen something that's clearly disturbed them. And I've been collecting data also on stock and wildlife killing as well, especially in the Eastern Otways, that has convinced me that it's a worthwhile exercise just to vindicate witnesses. We're talking people here, including senior politicians, people who are in the professions, who've seen something that's clearly disturbed them, quite apart from a lot of farmers, some hunters, people who know the bush and know the animals that are in it.
I mean, we should be upfront about this and say that there are many authorities who are very sceptical about that. I mean, they call this cryptozoology, and most authorities put what are sometimes called phantom cats in the same basket as the abominable snowman and UFOs and so on. There do seem to be overlaps between the two groups. You know, when you go online, there's lots of unexplained phenomena sites in which little green men and your big cats live on the same web page.
They can do. They're not necessarily my big cats on those web pages. I try to deal in something that's, if you like, as hard-nosed and as pragmatic as you can be. If you look at my site, you'll notice that we do illustrate it primarily with stock kills. And people familiar with stock killing knows that for most individual species of predator, it follows a given format, the way an animal is killed and consumed. We've got something going on that doesn't necessarily answer to feral dogs or dingoes. And with the witnesses of the so-called cats, I'm not going to call them cats myself. I don't think that's right. I prefer a mystery predator as a good name, good acronym.
But you do reckon they're cats. I mean, you start the story by telling us that you saw one when you were a teenager.
This is true. But just because I think I've seen something doesn't mean that it's necessarily there.
Yeah.
It's more the body of witnesses plus the evidence that's been provided.
Let's talk about these. Let's talk more about these pictures, because as you say on your website, there are these very grisly photographs of dead stock. There's lots of sheep
and kangaroos,
and some kangaroos indeed. And I mean, you tell me that these are distinctive. The suggestion is they've been killed by a cat, and of course I sit here thinking, well, why not a dog? Why not a fox? Maybe these bones have been, picked clean by the crows. What is it that suggests that a cat has done this?
Where one has a kill that is quite fresh. In fact, it may still be warm. It's killed by a crushing bite to the throat. Sometimes the head, in the case of kangaroos, is completely consumed. The chest is opened up, the heart, liver and lungs are gone, and the ribs are sheared quite cleanly, almost as though they were done with secateurs. And if you, when one of my illustrations, you will notice that there's also a forearm gone. That particular kangaroo was still warm to the touch. You could pop your hand inside it. It was as warm as your own body. And the amount of meat that was gone was the equivalent of a 4-gallon bucket. Now, I, at one stage in my life, was a zookeeper and was around big cats. And it's interesting to see how much food they can actually put away. And the cats I'm talking about are the middle-sized things like leopards and mountain lions. They can eat a considerable quantity at one sitting. And because we have got access to farms and we're in touch with naturalists and people in the bush, whenever we can get to a fresh kill, we know that we can take samples now, which would be ideal to be analysed for saliva traces to ascertain what actually was eating these animals. The technique in Australia is second to none in the world for DNA analysis of, in this particular case, dog kills. There are companies here that provide information for court use, and they can actually identify the individual dog based on a bite and the saliva and DNA that's within that saliva. Now, if we can do that for dogs, if we can get good fresh kills in the bush that don't add up to being wild dog or fox kills, I think that might be a good place for the government to spend a few dollars in doing some analysis on this sort of thing.
So have you got samples that could be tested?
I have some material at the moment. The best stuff I've seen over the years, of course, I wasn't able to keep because of the sheer volume of size of specimens and so on. But in the past, of course, we didn't have access to DNA laboratories the way we do today. And as I say, it's cutting-edge science, and it's some of the best in the world's done here.
Mm. This is Bush Telegraph on ABC Radio National, and I'm talking to Simon Townsend, who runs a website called Big Cats Victoria. Yeah. He's on the hunt for those cats. I'm sure we've all heard about the rumours, anyway, that there are cats that live in the backcountry of Victoria and in other parts of Australia, in fact. Now, if you've seen one of these animals yourself, actually eyeballed one, jump onto Facebook and let us know. Just if you log into Facebook and then type a Bush Telegraph into search, you'll find our webpage. We've got one here. There was this is a listener writing to Facebook. There was one in the Grampians, says this listener, that we saw once. Far too big to be a regular feral cat. I saw one loping into the bush at the Cathedral Ranges. Now, okay, so the Grampians are in Victoria. Is that typical?
From my record keeping, yes. Actually, the phenomenon seems to be primarily from southeast South Australia through most of central Victoria, as well as the Otways and coastal regions around, say, the Glenelg country, across to the other side of Port Phillip Bay in Gippsland, and up into along the spine of the Great Dividing Ranges, at least as far as the Blue Mountains, and further north, maybe to as far as Glen Innes. Now, there are reports from all those areas. I concentrate primarily on the west side of Melbourne, especially the Otways region where I live, for obvious reasons, cost of fuel and all that sort of thing, and being able to build up a network of informants who, if they do see something, have got the good grace to contact.
Yeah, so the Otways is a hilly region in western coastal Victoria, just back from the coast.
Quite rugged in parts.
And rugged, yeah, big, heavily timbered country, a lot of it. Yeah, now, all right, so how long have there been rumours of this? I mean,
they stretch back to late colonial times. The observations on these on such animals, of course, in pre-TV days, any news was interesting news, and if somebody saw something unusual in one form or another, it was usually made it into a local country newspaper.
Now, look, I've been having some fun with the sound. I mean, I'll just play it again because it's a big noise. I mean,
sure.
Now, if there were noises like that in the night, people would hear them. I mean, I used to live near a zoo, and you could hear the lions at night, coming over the parkland, clearly. Now, do you have reports of people actually hearing? It would have to be
very occasionally.
It would have to be a pack of these things, because it can't just be one animal. There's got to be a breeding group.
Yeah, population for sure. But remember, all large predators tend to be singulars. They live alone. They only get together to breed, and that's once every 2 years. And if two animals are seen together, it's most likely to be a female with a mature age young that's still camping with her.
Well, how does that work? I mean, we're used to the idea of lions living in prides. The puma and the panther, who are the top contenders for this, I gather, they're more solitary, are they?
Very much so. They have large home ranges, and they mutually avoid each other. So, as I say, they only get together for sex, and they are very hard to find under normal circumstances in their countries of origin. Now, what species we're dealing with here, we don't really know. That's why, at least the DNA scenario would give us an indication excuse me, of what we might be dealing with. And then, of course, the clincher is a specimen needs to be obtained for obviously for legal reasons, so the government can make decisions about where it goes from here with what it might have. Now, that might not be a simple matter. There are records in the United States of how difficult it is to see mountain lions or pumas. I mean, very difficult. There was a chap called Ben Lilly who was probably the most successful government predator hunter in the US, and he never saw a mountain lion until his dogs had started to chase it. He'd never seen one in the bush unless his dogs actually chased it. And he was the most successful mountain lion hunter of all time. That gives you an indication of how these animals can keep out of the way.
All right. Now, the Victorian government, the recently elected Victorian government, the Liberal government of Ted Baillieu, made promises during the election campaign that it would fund research into this, I'm not sure they thought they were going to win that election, but now they're in government.
Yeah.
Do you think they're going to live up to this?
I have no reason to think that they wouldn't honour an election promise. It would be a good politics to honour it, and it probably wouldn't cost all that much money to at least do some analysis of specimens.
Well, it might not be good politics because the majority of people, I sense, are a bit sceptical about this. And
I'm sure they are.
The opposition will say that this is like spending money looking for the Loch Ness Monster.
The opposition said that actually before the election and were quite scathing, which is really rather a slap in the face for people who've been brave enough as witnesses to come forward and give testimony to what they've seen. I might add that one of my informants was the late Senator John Button, and other people of similar public account have come forward to me in the past, including other MPs.
Well, I knew the late Senator John Button very well, and I mean, he was a man with a sense of mischief, but I don't suppose he would be foolish about this.
No, he was quite serious.
Yeah.
I spent the best part of a couple of hours chatting with him about various things, and this was something that he volunteered to me, curiously, without knowing my interest in the subject.
Yes, well, that is an interesting person to have on your side. Now, there are some theories about how they got here. One is that I hear a lot is that they were one of these cats may have been a mascot for US servicemen. Now, you would come back to this point. If this theory is right, you'd have to have a lot of mascots escaping to have a breeding population. One puma that escaped during the Second World War would now be well and truly dead.
It certainly would. The average age is only around 12 years that they survived to. There have been mascots, there may have been some released, but what's happened is that has taken on the overtones of a truly urban myth. It's become a throwaway line, a very easy thing to talk about, but very difficult to substantiate.
Can't find any evidence. I've been searching for evidence that they had live animals as mascots. Can't find any.
There are photographs and so on.
Are there?
Yeah, there are several really good Australian publications covering these topics.
What of GIs with a big cat as their mascot?
Yep.
Gosh.
And also that's been looked at very carefully by a Deakin University academic, Professor Henry.
Well, this is a very interesting story. There may be more to this than literally meets the eye. It's very good to talk to you, Simon. Thank you for coming on board.
It's my pleasure.
Simon Townsend, he's a man on a lifelong quest to discover the big cats of Victoria. His website is called Big Cats Victoria. We'll put a link to it, but if you do a web search for Big Cats Victoria, you'll find it pretty simply. This is Bush Telly on ABC Radio National. We're online at abc.net.au/RN.